understanding trigonometric notation and conventions. Now, you might think of math as just numbers and equations, but in reality, notation acts as a universal language. Just like how words and grammar allow us to communicate ideas clearly in English, mathematical notation allows mathematicians across the world to understand the exact same concepts without any confusion. As we move into the world of trigonometry, you'll notice we use a very specific set of symbols and shorthand notations. We use these because trigonometry deals with some pretty complex relationships between the angles of a triangle and the lengths of its sides. Writing those relationships out in long-form sentences would be incredibly messy and difficult to read. For those of you in grade X, mastering these conventions right now is absolutely crucial. I cannot stress this enough. Misinterpreting a single symbol, like confusing a power with an inverse, can lead to fundamental errors in your calculations that can ruin an entire problem. So, in this tutorial, we are going to break down the most important notations you'll encounter, and the specific conventions you must follow to ensure your work is accurate. Welcome, everyone. Before we dive into the calculations, let's take a moment to look at our first slide, understanding trigonometric notation and conventions. In the next slide, we'll start with one of the most important distinctions you'll need to make, understanding the difference between a function and a product. Function versus product. Now that we've established that notation is the universal language of mathematics, let's dive into our first major hurdle. One of the most common misconceptions you'll encounter as a beginner is the tendency to treat a trigonometric ratio as if it were a simple multiplication problem. To clear this up, let's look at the core concept. When you see the symbol sine A, it is crucial to understand that this is not a variable named sine being multiplied by a variable named A. Instead, sine is what we call a function. In mathematics, a function acts like a machine. It takes an input, which in this case is the angle A, and provides a specific, predictable output, which is the ratio of the opposite side to the hypotenuse. To make sure you're applying this correctly, let's follow a simple step-by-step breakdown. First, always identify the symbol clearly, such as sine A second. Practice reading it aloud as the sine of angle A. This small change in how you speak the notation will help you remember the logic. Finally, remind yourself of the operation. You are not performing multiplication. You are simply finding the specific value of the ratio for that particular angle. If you're still feeling a bit unsure, think of a real-world analogy using the square root symbol. When you see the square root of x, you don't multiply the square root symbol by x. Rather, the symbol acts as an instruction to perform a specific operation on x in the exact same way the sine symbol tells you to perform the trigonometric operation on angle A. This distinction is vital because, as we will see in the next slide, how we handle these symbols, especially when we start squaring them, can change the entire meaning of your equation. Powers of ratios. Now that we understand that sine is a function and not a multiplication problem, let's look at how we handle powers of these ratios. To make our equations look cleaner and much easier to write, mathematicians use a specific kind of shorthand when they want to square a trigonometric ratio. The core concept here is this. The notation sine squared of A is used to represent the square of the entire ratio. Let's break this down step by step so there is no confusion. First, you find the value of the ratio itself, which is sine of A second. You take that resulting value and square it, which we write as open parenthesis, sine of a close parenthesis, all squared. Therefore, you can conclude that sine squared of A is exactly equal to open parenthesis, sine of a close parenthesis, squared. To make this even clearer, let's look at a practical example. Suppose we have an angle A where the sine of it equals 0.5. If we want to find sine squared of A, it is very important to remember that you do not square the angle A itself. Instead, you square the numerical value we found earlier. So, 0.5 squared equals 0.25. Thus, our final answer is that sine squared of A equals 0.25. Keep this distinction in mind, because in the next slide, we will see how a similar-looking notation involving a -1 exponent actually refers to something entirely different, the reciprocal. Inverse notation warning. There is a significant difference between what we call a reciprocal and what we call an inverse function. First, let's look at the reciprocal. As we discussed in the previous slides, trigonometric ratios are functions. When we talk about the cosecant ratio, we are talking about the reciprocal of the sine ratio. You can write this in two ways, either as cosecant of A equals 1 over sine of A, or, as you might see in some textbooks, cosecant of A equals the quantity sine of A, all raised to the power of -1. In this specific case, that -1 exponent is simply a mathematical shorthand telling you to take the multiplicative inverse, which is just a fancy way of saying you are flipping the fraction upside down. Next, let's look at the inverse function. As you progress into higher mathematics, you will encounter a different notation. Sine to the power of -1 of A, this is known as the inverse sine function, or sometimes called arcsine. Unlike the reciprocal we just discussed, this function does the opposite job. It is used to find the measure of the angle itself when you already know the value of the ratio. This brings us to the most critical distinction you must memorize. The quantity sine of A raised to the power of -1 is not equal to sine to the power of -1 of A to keep it simple. The first one, the reciprocal, results in a ratio or a value. The second one, the inverse function, results in an angle. Now, moving on to slide 4, I want to draw your attention to a very important warning regarding inverse notation. This is a specific area where even advanced students often encounter confusion, so please listen closely. As we will see in the next slide, keeping these symbols straight is vital when we start working with general angle symbols like theta. So, always ask yourself, am I flipping a fraction, or am I searching for an angle? Angle symbols. Now that we understand how to read the functions and the powers of these ratios, let's move on to slide 5, where we look at how we actually name or represent the angles themselves. In trigonometry, we use letters to represent the measure of an angle. Now, while you could technically use any letter you like, mathematicians follow certain standard conventions to keep things organized. First, let's look at the use of capital letters. When we are working with a specific geometric shape, like a triangle, we typically use capital letters such as A, B, or C. For instance, if you see a triangle labeled delta ABC, the angles inside that triangle will be referred to as angle A, angle B, and angle C. This helps us keep track of which specific corner of the triangle we are discussing. On the other hand, we also frequently use Greek letters. The most common one you will encounter is the Greek letter theta. We use theta to denote an arbitrary or unknown angle in general trigonometric equations. Unlike the capital letters we just discussed, theta doesn't necessarily belong to a specific triangle you're looking at. It's just a placeholder for an angle that might be unknown. To give you a practical example of how this looks in a problem, if a question asks you to find the value of cosine theta, it isn't referring to a specific corner of a labeled triangle, but is simply asking you to find the cosine ratio for a general, unspecified angle, theta. As we move to the next slide, we will look at how these different notations can sometimes lead to common mistakes, so pay close attention to how these symbols are written. Common mistakes to avoid. First, let's look at a common algebraic error. You might be tempted to write sine A as sine multiplied by A, and then try to cancel out the sign from the top and bottom of a fraction, just like you would with a variable. Please do not do this. As we discussed earlier in the lesson, sine is not a number or a variable, it is a function. You must treat sine A as a single, inseparable unit. You cannot pull the sine away from its angle A, any more than you could pull the square root symbol away from the number inside it. Second, be very careful with where you make your exponents. It is easy to confuse sine squared of A with sine of A squared. These are two completely different operations. In sine squared of A, we find the sine of the angle first, and then we square that resulting value. However, in sine of A squared, you're squaring the angle itself before even applying the sine function. As you saw in our breakdown of powers of ratios, the exponent on the function refers to the result, not the input. Finally, let's revisit the danger of the -1 exponent. Do not assume that sine to the power of -1 of a is the same as 1 divided by sine a. As we covered in our slide on inverse notation, the -1 exponent can be tricky. When it is applied to the entire function, it represents the inverse sign, or arcsine, which is used to find an unknown angle. But when we talk about 1 divided by sine a, we are talking about the reciprocal, which is the cosecant of a in your grade X studies. Always check whether you are looking for a flipped fraction or a way to find an angle. Now, before we wrap up with our final summary, I want to pause and address some of the most frequent pitfalls I see students falling into. If you can avoid these 3 mistakes, you'll be well ahead of the curve. Keep these corrections in mind, and you will maintain much greater accuracy in your trigonometric calculations. Key takeaways. All right, we have reached the end of our tutorial. Let's quickly recap the most vital points we've covered today to ensure you have a solid foundation before moving on to more complex trigonometric calculations. First, remember that when you see sine of angle A, you must treat it as a single functional unit. It is a function, not a multiplication problem where you are multiplying a variable called sine by a variable called a. Second, keep an eye on your exponents. When you see sine squared of angle A, that is simply a mathematical shorthand for the quantity sine of angle A, all squared. Always remember to find the ratio first and then square the result. Third, and perhaps most importantly, be extremely careful with the -1 exponent. If you see the quantity sine of angle A, all raised to the power of -1, that refers to the reciprocal, which is cosecant of angle A. However, if you see the notation sine inverse of angle A, that refers to the inverse function, which is used to find the measure of the angle itself. These are 2 very different operations. Finally, don't be intimidated by new symbols. When you see the Greek letter theta, just remember that it is simply the standard symbol used to represent an arbitrary or unknown angle. If you have mastered these notations, you are well prepared to tackle the actual trigonometric identities and problem solving in our next lesson. Great job today!